I'm Luality, and today I'm going to tell you guys about how BioWare flew me all the way to San Francisco so I could play the next Dragon Age the Veilguard, for around maybe 5, maybe 7 hours, I'm not sure. I'm going to share with you guys the things I have learned about the game. I got to talk a little bit with the devs and I don't know, pick their brains a little about the things that they liked the most. This is not a review. This was more like an extended demo that they showed us a few parts in the beginning and then a little bit ahead and a few other side fights. So I can't tell you if the game is going to be the best game ever, the worst game ever. I can't say any of this. All I can tell you is how I felt, if I enjoyed the parts that I got to play while I was there. And I did not get asked by BioWare to make this video. I did not get paid to make this video. They did pay for my travel expenses to go to San Francisco. But that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, please click the like button and also the subscribe button if you can. It helps me out so much. You have no idea. Thank you. Overall, I had a lot of fun playing the game, and by the end of the gameplay session, I did want to play the game more. The beginning, it felt like a little bit slower, both for me to get into the gameplay and the story, but as it kept going, I really warmed up to it, and it got really fun. Overall, the game was better than I expected initially. The game was really stable, a lot more than my mental health. The story was good. I just wish that at times it was a little bit less lighthearted, but there were some dark moments that I didn't even expect to be in the game based on the trailers. The graphics and art style, the environmental design, I really liked it. Didn't have many problems with it. The character faces, I wish they were a little bit more realistic, especially the Quinari. It seemed a little bit goofy. I did try to create a good looking Quinari, but I ended up just moving on and just playing the game. Overall, that's my first impression. I really liked what I saw, and I honestly want to see more. So, first things first, character creation. It was honestly amazing. This character creator, it felt like simple enough that if you just want to create a good looking character, you can. But at the same time, if you want to go in and start moving every slider, do whatever the hell you want, you can. You basically can get as deep as you want into creating your character. I tried out all the different races, all the different hairstyles. I was especially fond of the very curly and puffy hair that looked like Merida to me from Brave. I made the hair red, and it was like so bouncy that people would come behind my computer as I was playing and compliment my character's hair, how it looked so good. You can create like your Inquisitor, you can choose your background, you can customize the difficulty of the game in any way that you might want. It's very in-depth. I literally have no complaints about the character creation, except that is the one place where the game crashed on me. I was trying to alt-tab the game a lot as I was recording the footage for the game, and maybe that didn't play as well. But the devs took it very seriously, and they came check. After I was done with my gameplay section, they took the logs. They tried to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. And I think that I'm the only person that was there that had the game crash on them. I thought the combat was fun. It didn't have anything left from the tactical stuff from Origins, but it felt like it stood on its own. I thought that I would miss having the swapping to the companions, but the combat was active enough and I had enough things to do that I didn't really feel the need. It was already overwhelming enough with what I had to do. Overall, the combat felt a lot like Inquisition and Mass Effect. I liked it. It was a good time. It didn't feel like a Souls game at all. I heard some people asking me about this, but it was an action RPG, and for what's worth, it was fun. It works for the game. I played both with mouse and keyboard and a controller. Even though usually I played all Dragon Ages with a mouse and keyboard, this one I preferred playing with the controller. It just felt more natural to me. I hope that down the road, some game company decides to pick up on this style of tactical gameplay from not only Dragon Age Origins, but I also feel like Guild Wars 1 had a similar feeling that you could program the AI of your companions. And I always like this kind of stuff, and I feel like it has been a while since somebody has tried to invest in this kind of combat. It would be lovely to see. But this is not a game for this. They clearly moved on this time. And honestly, the game is fun. The combat is fun the way it is. Let's talk a little bit about the different classes. At low level, I only really played as Rogue and a tiny bit of Warrior. Overall, I preferred Rogue to Warrior in the beginning of the game. Felt like high mobility. You could do some, but limited AoE damage. It felt quite strong in the start. Warrior, I didn't really vibe much with it. It just felt like slower. Rogue overall was better early game for me. I sadly did not get enough time to try Mage early game, but Mage and Warrior, they were both extremely fun at level 30. Warrior was a lot more about doing like posture damage, crowd control. Parrying is good, so you have a little red above your character when you absolutely have to dodge. If you don't have to dodge, you have a little yellow, and you should often parry, because then you do a lot more posture damage to enemies. It seemed like every class was viable. The things that I liked and disliked of each class seemed like a lot of personal taste. Some people have a more aggressive and fast-paced combat, so probably Rogue is better for you. That's kind of how I play. Warrior felt a little bit more like slower, but you can still do a lot of damage, but your character overall moves slower. You're kind of like more like tanky. Mage, I thought I wouldn't like Mage as much. I was wrong. It was the last class I played, and I was so surprised. At high levels, it felt like the Warrior is scaled the best. At times, the Mage, it seems like I was performing a little bit worse, and it was a little bit harder for me to set up my combos. The Warrior, that never really happened. It felt like I was strong all the way through. The game has a little system called adrenaline, and the more that you attack, the more adrenaline you build, and when the meter is full, you can use an ultimate attack. I also think that the combos that you do with your allies interferes with that as well. Oh, one thing that's probably important to notice, at times it felt like there were a lot of things going on in my screen, like a lot of different colors, a lot of different skills. So at times the visual clutter was quite overwhelming. And I feel like it's not only when you're playing as a mage, but definitely especially if you're playing as a mage. In the gameplay, I thought that it would feel really weird that you can't control your companions, because it has always been a thing in Dragon Age. But it honestly turned out fine. I feel like I had already enough things to do with my own character that I didn't really worry too much about them. Whenever I used the UI to tell my companions to do certain combos and stuff, they did like so well. They did it better than I did. In fact, it was a lot better for me to combo my two companions together, because they would be very smart and quick to do it, than me comboing with a companion, because sometimes I would press other things before my character was done and the combo wouldn't happen. There are different types of conditions that you can apply, and then conditions that you can detonate. And you will have skills that can either apply or detonate certain things. Like, for example, you can apply weakness, and then Belara might have a skill that can detonate weakness. So the combos are when somebody applies a condition and then somebody else detonates it. When the combo is triggered, that's when your companions do the most impactful difference in the combat. If you just leave them to do their own thing, they will still use their skills every now and then. I noticed that Belara would sometimes heal me whenever my HP went down. But if you want to do large amounts of damage, then you need to do the combos. It's kind of like a must-have thing. The combos, when they're executed, there is this huge golden AoE that damages everything inside that zone, not only the enemy being comboed, and it's really, really good. You can couple it with some like crowd control skills to keep the enemies all inside a circle and do a lot of damage. You could also tell your companions to attack certain targets, both of them or one of them. There were some mechanics in the game that required me to move enemies around, so it was actually quite useful. So my companions would be busy with one guy, and then I would try to drag somebody else to a corner and deal with them. Let's talk a little bit about the enemies. The normal enemies, they felt normal. The elite enemies, they felt a little bit too tanky. I feel like the first time that you encounter them in game, they were kind of like a mini boss. And the mini boss section of them, they were fine. But when they were just like elite enemies in the middle of a bunch of other enemies, they felt a little bit tanky. I didn't try playing the game on the very hard difficulty. I tried to play the game in the very middle. I don't think the enemies, they change a lot in behavior. In fact, the behavior of the enemies, their AI that I fought was as smart as they get. Some enemies, they were actually quite smart. Some enemies, they would block my attacks. And that was kind of cool. So your positioning when you're fighting some enemies, especially if they have something like a shield, it can play a hand. I don't like when the increase in difficulty is just added health and damage, so everything is very spongy and one-shots you. I like when enemies surprise me and they're smarter and they go out of the way to like put me in trouble, or let's say that's a little bit harder for me to bully them. Since I didn't really get to slide the difficulty sliders too much, I don't know if on the hardest difficulty how it is. I didn't have the time to test, but I'll definitely try it a little bit when the game comes out. And all that is actually in the character creator. You can have a custom difficulty that you can make the enemies like have high damage, but not too much health. So all those things are actually sliders if you're creating custom difficulty. The bosses are some of the things that I was most looking forward to seeing in the game like this, and my favorite boss fights were fights I wasn't allowed to record. And I'm not going to describe them in a lot of detail because I don't want to spoil. But there is one fight in particular that I did that I can't wait to make some nasty jokes about it as I'm fighting it on my stream. So if you want, please stop by to hear my naughty jokes. The boss fights, they felt fun. They had different phases. They weren't like overly complex, but they definitely did like things. For example, if you reach a certain amount of health, you have to do something or you have to adapt in some way. I also fought a mage that transformed into something else, but they were all fun. The bosses, I don't have any complaints or any observations on them. I didn't have a lot of time to experiment with different builds. Other than the prologue, my characters were pre-built. The skill tree, overall, it's quite like more or less the same idea as Path of Exile, except of course not as that complex. The bigger nodes, they kind of have a bigger impact. Medium nodes, they have new abilities and modifiers to existing ones, and the smaller ones, they have passives and stat boosts. Each class had 3 different subclasses that they play pretty differently. I didn't get into a lot of time to try each subclass of each different class, but the devs say that the skill trees were designed to harmonize with each other, so hopefully you can theory craft some pretty unique builds. You can upgrade your equipment, you can enchant your equipment, you can do the same with your companions. The companions, they have their own skill tree that's smaller than the player. You get basically experience by how much like you talk and you do their quests and you hang out with them, so it's kind of like you level up your bond kind of thing. Whenever you level up, they unlock 2 skill points that you can put whatever you want. I didn't spend a lot of time with these skills. I do have friends like Wolfheart, who did. So maybe check out his video if you're looking for that kind of stuff. The beginning of the game is obviously very linear. It's the prologue. Everyone goes through the same. But as you progress through the game, you are faced with some really tough decisions. For example, you might not be able to be at 2 places at once because you're only one. There's multiple choices like this throughout the game. And sometimes even the things that you do not do might affect you, depending if you decide to ignore certain side quests that could cost you the life of somebody else down the road and things like that. The companions that you decide to date, they will date you. The companions you don't date, they will start dating each other. And I feel like the reason why they did something like this is to maximize emotional damage. That's my assumption. I hope that that's what happens, because that would be really cool to see. Visually speaking, when it comes especially to environments, this game looks absolutely breathtaking. At times, it was hard to keep my eyes away from the reflections and the RTX. I am sexually attracted to RTX. Whenever I see those very good looking reflections, I just can't think or pay attention to anything else. My eyes go to where the shiny reflections are. And this game has a lot of that. There's a lot of environments that look and feel very dark. I got to see 2 beautiful cities, and honestly, they were very, very, very pretty. The one thing that sometimes struck me as a little bit uncanny, it was every now and then the motion capture, it just didn't feel natural. Sometimes the characters, they felt like they didn't express themselves with the rest of their faces a lot, mostly with the mouth and the eyes, but there was a bunch of other things in between, and at times I missed them. I don't know. Maybe I'm just very picky with this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff I find that I'm a very expressive person, so it's usually something that I pick very fast in games. I think the environment and this game overall is beautiful. This is the prettiest Dragon Age there is out there. Is going to be, but the companions, they look very stylized, a little bit cartoony, a little bit more than I wish they would. At times, especially in the beginning of the story, that plus the dialogue, I wish that they had a more serious tone at times. As I kept playing the game and as I kept going deeper and deeper, I felt like that was less of a problem. There were some funny parts, some comedic relief that I personally love in Dragon Age. Dragon Age, there's 2 things I really love about it: the humor and how horny it is. I definitely got to experience some of the humor. There is a part that they are traveling through the Elonian mirrors and the mirror just falls and they're like, oops. So I don't know, it was kind of cute. The horny, I didn't see a lot of horny. Even like the banter, honestly, the little of banter that I saw was a little bit weak. Especially, I have been recently playing Dragon Age 2 and the banter in that game is so good. But the cutscenes in this game, they're definitely a lot higher quality and a lot better than they were in the previous games. Maybe that's the payoff. I don't know. Maybe the banter gets a little bit better in different places that I couldn't play. I don't know. I talked with one of the devs. I told him that my favorite thing about Dragon Age was how horny the game is. And he hinted, saying that maybe Dave is even hornier than Dragon Age 2. I told him, are you sure? And he was like, I don't know. I guess it's up to you to judge. I kind of doubt it's going to be hornier than Dragon Age 2 because I find that Dragon Age is like peak horny. But who knows? Maybe the game will surprise me. Personally, the game has already surprised me when I went there and played. When it comes to voice acting, I really like some of the companions. Others, I'm not so sure. I especially liked the voice acting of Lucanus. I find that accents, they add so much to the immersion of a story. I also really like Varric, of course. I also like Bilara. There was also a decision. There was this commander guy, and you have to decide to either take the power by force or take the power by diplomacy. I really like that, punching that guy in the face. There was just something so satisfying about it, and my companions greatly approving or disapproving my actions. I don't know, it felt even better when they say greatly approve or disapprove. That when I played the second time, I was like, maybe for the sake of the recording and for people being able to see a second choice, I should really pick the other one. And I was so tired, and I kept like going back and forth into the decisions, and I was like, fuck. And then I punched the guy again. I'm sorry. When you play the game, if you want, you pick the other choice, but I don't think I will ever. Punching that guy just felt so right. It felt so good. Guess what? The dialogue wheel is back, of course. For the longest time, I thought that the dialogue wheel wasn't used on other games because it's kind of like bad. You know, sometimes it has something like written and your character says something else. Apparently, I heard somebody say that the dialogue wheel is patented by BioWare. And that's honestly a good thing because I kind of love that outside of BioWare games, there's not a lot of that. But given all the hatred that I feel for that wheel, the wheel was actually better in this game. I could actually even go in more, and there were like more options around the wheel. Also, I find it important to keep in mind that I was in a very busy environment. Playing the game in a situation like this is a lot different than when you're playing at home. So things like music, the music seemed good, but I couldn't pay a lot of attention to it. Again, very busy environment, very overwhelming. Lots of those little final details, they're a little bit blurred to me. So I hope you guys understand that there were just some things that I wasn't able to pay a lot of attention to. My favorite part of the gameplay were sadly parts that I couldn't record. There were some pretty cool bosses, there were some tough decisions. There were also a lot more darker parts of the game than I would have expected, especially since seeing the trailers. The first trailers, they were more like lighthearted than some of the stuff I saw. There was somebody being sacrificed and in ways that were hard to look at in the end of the prologue. The devs, they were very excited to talk about the game and show the game to the world, which to me is a good sign. They were particularly excited about the companions dating one another, which I know these people. Some of them can be very evil. I think they're going to use this to hurt the players' feelings, get them invested, and then take it from them. So, conclusions. I had a lot of fun playing the game. I feel like I really warmed up to the combat. When I played with the level 30 characters, it was really engaging and I wanted to explore more about that, but I was really short in time. It does feel like they learned from their shortcomings in Inquisition. Like, for example, Inquisition felt like a giant single-player MMO with a lot of like way too open space, a lot of going from point A to point B. This game is a lot more objective, to the point that some people might even miss a little bit of the exploration, but I did hear that the game opens up later in the game. I didn't get to experience that during this gameplay. If you liked the video, I would really appreciate if you press the like button and also subscribe so I'm able to do more content like this. It helps me a lot, and thank you. I have a little extra thing that I want to show with you guys, but some people might consider it a minor spoiler, so this is your cue to leave the video, and I hopefully see you on the next one. If you decide to stay, I hope you like what you're about to see.
It is strong. It has already blocked the escape route I had planned.